Hi, welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. On this podcast, we're going to continue to talk about cost, but we are now going to make a distinction between costs in the short run and costs in the long run. Costs in the short run, costs in the long run. And remember, in the short run, that's when some of your costs are fixed. That's the definition of short run. Short run is defined as when some of your costs are fixed. Some of your costs are fixed in the short run. And then the long run, that's when all of your costs are variable. There are no fixed costs. Anything can be changed if you have a long run point of view, if you think about long run point of view. So let's put these two ideas together on one graph. So let's think about it this way. Let's imagine that we are going to build an automobile plant. And so down here on my horizontal axis, this is going to be the quantity of cars that we plan on producing. And on the vertical axis, that's going to be my costs. Okay, my costs are going to be measured on my vertical. And let's say that we are considering building this. We're considering building this plant in Europe, and so we go. Let's be more specific. We're going to build the plant in Germany, and so we go to Germany. We could study what the costs would be, and there would be all kinds of costs. There would be all kinds of taxes to take into account. There would be labor costs to take into account. There would be regulatory costs. There would be all kinds of different costs that we'd have to take into account. And after we take those all into account, let's say we come up with a cost curve that looks like this, and we'll call this short run average total cost curve 1. So that's a mouthful. Short run average total cost curve 1. And that's, we're going to say if we decide to build in Germany. We said if we build our plant in, that says Germany. And so that would be our cost curve if we decided to build in Germany. Now, we haven't built it yet, so we don't have to do this. We have other options. And maybe another option is maybe we want to build the plant in China. And so if we build the plant in China, it's going to be different costs involved. Labor costs maybe are going to be maybe a little bit lower. Maybe the workers will be less productive than a German worker might be. Maybe there's going to be different taxes. There's going to be various different costs, and so maybe the cost curve for building cars in China would look something like this. This would be the short run average total cost curve. So we'll call that short run average total cost curve 2, and that would be the cost curve if we decided to build our plant somewhere in China. And then maybe a third cost curve, another place that we are thinking about building the plant might be in Australia. And in Australia, they're going to have a different set of costs. The labor is going to have a different cost. Distribution costs might be higher because the cars are going to have to be shipped to lots of places around the world, overseas. So whatever all those costs are, we could draw another cost curve, let's say, for Australia, looks like this. Now, it's really important to notice that all three of these cost curves, this one's Australia, and all of these are different plants. They're not connected to each other in any way. These are all possible cost curves if we choose to build in one of these three areas. Now, here's the big idea. Once we build the plant in Germany, then that becomes the cost curve that we're stuck on. No matter what our level of production, we are stuck on that cost curve in the short run if we build that plant. If, on the other hand, we build the plant in China, then we are stuck on this cost curve. No matter how many cars we produce, we have to produce on this cost curve because we're stuck there in the short run. That's what the definition of the short run is. If we, on the other hand, decide to build in Australia and we build this plant, well, then we're going to be stuck on this cost curve. Okay, cost curve, short and average total cost curve number 3. We're going to be stuck on that cost curve because, that's the plant that we built, and no matter what our level of production, that's what we're stuck on. But in the long run, if we want to think about the long run, as we kind of stand back and think about this from the long run point of view, right now we could choose any of those three plants that we want. In the long run, we can switch plants. We can make changes. So we could produce on any one of these plants that we wanted to. So here's how I want to think about it. In the long run, we now have to ask, how many cars are we planning to produce? What's our number? What's our quantity that we are planning to produce? So if I'm planning to produce, I don't know, let's say I'm planning to produce this many cars right here. Now, the question is, which plant should I build? Well, I probably want to build the plant in Germany, short run average total cost curve 1, because if I produce Q1 cars, the place where I can do that the cheapest is in Germany. I just come up with the vertical dashed line, and whichever cost curve I hit first, that's the cheapest. If I build it in China, well then it would cost this much, this many dollars, whatever that is. It would cost that many dollars in order to produce Q1 cars. Now, the second possibility, or another possibility, is we could produce this many cars, right here. We could produce this many cars. And if we produce that many cars, where would we want to build our plant? Well, we could build our plant in China, and that would cost this much to produce. If we produced in Australia, then it would cost this much to produce. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to figure out what our level of production would be, and then which cost curve would be the lowest, provide us with the lowest costs at these different possible levels of production. And so, okay, so I'm going to get rid of those. Let me just get rid of all of that I just drew. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we would make this decision. Where does it cost us more or less? So, okay, so all that's disappeared. And now let's identify the important points. Here's one important point. And what's so important about this point right here? I'm now going to call that Q1. That's an important point because if we produce at any level below Q1, then this, the first short run average total cost curve, where we build the plant in Germany, that's going to be the cheapest. Okay, that's going to have the lowest cost for our company. Okay, and if we decide to produce above Q1, well, we would no longer want to produce on this short run average total cost curve because it would now be above the cost of if we build the plant in China. That's this one. So from Q1 to Q2, any production between these 2 points, the curve that provides us, the plant that provides us with the lowest cost would be right here. This would be short run average total cost curve number 2. That would provide us with the lowest cost. So any production level between Q1 and Q2, we'd want to build the plant in China. And if we think our production is going to be above Q2, anything out here, anything above Q2 cars, now the Australia becomes the cheaper. And so now that has the lowest average total cost curve. So we'd want to build our plant in Australia. So as we look at this from the long run, we can build any of these 3 plants that we want when we look at it from the point of view of the long run. So before we build any curves, we have a choice. We look at how many cars we could think about producing, and we could say, all right, if we anticipate producing below Q1 cars, we would build plant 1. If we anticipate between Q1 and Q2 cars, then we would build plant 2. And if we anticipate producing above Q2, then we should build the plant 3 in Australia. And so now the bottom of all these short run average total cost curves, the bottom of all these short run average total cost curves essentially become the long run average total cost curve. So the long run average total cost curve is made up of the bottom of all the short run curves. It's made up of the bottom of all of the short run curves. That's where the long run average total cost curve comes from. Now, again, once we choose one, then like if we build in China, if we decide to build the plant in China, now we face a short run situation. Now we're trapped. Now, if we produce above Q1, we're still stuck producing in China because, well, we're locked in. We're now locked in on the short run curve because we built the plant. Okay, but from a long run point of view, we have a choice. We could produce plant 1, plant 2, plant 3. We have a choice. And these are our choices on the bottoms of the short run average total cost curves. These are our choices along the long run average total cost curve to help us decide where to build the plan. So let me say it one more time. The long run average total cost curve is the bottom of all the short run average total cost curves. It's the bottom of all the short run average total cost curves. Okay, so now I'm going to do one more thing with this. I'm going to get kind of crazy with this. So I'm going to do this all over again. If I do this all over again, this should be a lowercase q because we're looking at an individual firm. I apologize. That should be lowercase q. And now what we want to say is we are not limited to only 3 possible plants. Okay, there's a lot of places where we could build a plant. We could build it in South Carolina, North Carolina, North Dakota, Alaska, Hawaii, Australia, China, Vietnam, Italy, somewhere in Africa. We have a very large number of places where we could build our plant, and each plant would have its own short run average total cost curve. Okay, each one would have its own short run average total cost curve. So I'm just drawing all these possible, I mean, this gets a little crazy and a little silly, but there's all the possible short and average total cost curves, right? So we could build plant 1, plant 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there would be even more than that, right? Whoops, I just got rid of one. Let's put that back. There it is. There would be even more than that. We could build, there's maybe another one right here, and then maybe there's another one right here, and there's another one right here, and another one right here. And then just the point is that these are all the short run average total cost curves, but the long run average total cost curve is going to be still going to be the bottom of all of those. It's still going to be the bottom of all of them. But the thing is this, the more short run average total cost curves you have, the flatter will become this long run average total cost curve, okay? The flatter it's going to become, right? So if in this example, we only had 3, and so, it was kind of bumping around and so on. But here, if we think about it as having a very large number of possibilities, a very large number of plants that we could build, then that provides us with a very flat long run average total cost curve. So that would become my long run average total cost curve. All right, so we'll talk more about long run average total cost curves on another podcast and why they look the way they look. Why does it look like this? Why does it go down and then begin to rise? We'll talk about that on another podcast. So thanks for joining me. This has been Mr. Hagan on another podcast, and we'll see you on the next podcast.